Talking to Bob Herrera-Lim. He's the managing director of Teneo Consultancy. Good afternoon, Bob. Thanks for joining us at such short notice at that.
Good afternoon.
Bob, we haven't talked to you in quite a while. By the way, I'm with Amy Pamintuan, the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Star. So it's just the two of us
Hi.
today. We haven't spoken to you in quite a while, and I wanted to ask about your thoughts on the flood control investigation and where it's going or not going. What have been your observations about it?
Okay, I think it's proceeding far slower or less meaningfully than many people want, especially those who would like to still support the president or who would like to think that the administration is doing something about it. Okay. We had that spurt of, shall we say, big news during the last quarter of last year. And one is some names prop up. The second is people have a general sense that this is not something that's confined, right? Corruption does not occur in only one part of the government, in one specific aspect. So people were appalled by the scope of the corruption, and therefore they expected a similarly large scale investigation. Maybe not just in the flood control, but in the people involved or the bureaucrats involved, but higher up, and also in a broader anti-corruption scheme that sort of convinces people that this is a break from the past. I don't think we're getting that sense. It almost feels like the noise is dropping down. People are not sure where it is going. So maybe the Marcos administration has a few more months, couple more months to convince people that it is serious. But right now, the sense is it's definitely dropped off.
Oh, hi. I mean, for you, at the very least, what were you expecting?
Yeah, I think the expectation was, first of all, that in the congressional process, there would be a lot more scrutiny, right? The corruption that happened down the road with the bureaucratic infrastructure of DPWH would not have happened without upstream connivance, right? Or participation.
By the
And right
legislators.
now, yeah, and right now the sense is, okay, we're getting a few people, but how was the budget process mangled? Okay, did it happen in the past? Does it happen in other agencies? In other words, if you have a big corruption issue, again, it's not isolated, right? If it happens in DPWH with flood control, does it happen elsewhere? And we haven't even come close to that. It's almost like it's just confined to this, and just like any disease, right? If it's systemic and you start thinking only of, I'll just look at one part of the body, you might miss other things, and people say, are you really doing something? So I think the biggest disappointment is the sense of a systemic reform, not just prosecution of those involved, but also the scrutinizing what happened at the budget process, who allowed it to happen, who participated, who knew what. Almost like in the US Watergate, right? Who knew, what did the president know and when did he know it? What did other congressional leaders and participants know and when did they know these things? So it's that sense, the sense of systemic reform, I think, is more at the front end of things. Because without the corruption to the budget process, the corruption down the road maybe would still be possible, but not at this scale. So it's both sides.
So actually, Bob, ang nakukulangan ng mga tao is in the accountability in the budget process. Kasi actually, ang mga final ng kaso are the engineers, the contractors, yung mga directly involved in the implementation. But in the budgeting, na ang involved are the politicians, yun ang kulang. Is that what you're saying?
Oo. Magtatagalog na ako kung okay lang.
Sige.
Okay. Yun talaga kasi 'di ba, ang corruption sa Pilipinas napakalawak, napakalaki, napakatagal na, right? So kung sasabihin natin parang sakit nga yan na ang sakit mo lang inandi dito sa daliri mo, pero alam ng tao, arthritic ka na, marami ka ng sakit sa katawan at hindi tiningnan yung ibang yun, magkaalangan ka na tama ba yung ginagawa, kompleto ba? At ayun sa tingin ko ang nagkukulang ngayon, na hindi hinuhukay. Sino ba yung nung niluto tong budget process, right? Whether flood gawin na natin flood control. Nung ginagawa tong budget, sino ba nakakaalam ng proseso? Ano ba nangyari dun sa mga committee hearings na tumawid mula sa ito yung budget, pumasok dun sa conference committee, ito lumabas. Right? Hindi tayo wala pang linawan. Sino ba nagpasok ng ano? Sabi lang nila transparency on the field, pero justice is accountability, malaman paano ba talaga niluluto yung proseso ng korupsyon sa loob ng Kongreso. Kasi kung hindi mangyari yun sa loob ng Kongreso, mas mahirap down the road, di ba? Kasi kung yung ikaw yung implementor, tas alam mo walang lutuan sa taas, wala kang lalapitan sa taas. So I think it is that at sa simula sa Kongreso, yung paano niluto na magkakaroon ng pera na pwedeng nakawin. Okay? Tapos, pangalawang step, yung implementasyon. Bakit nakalusot itong mga implementor na hindi na monitor, walang sistema? Pwede tayong, yan yung napakalaking question. Ang problema kasi ng sambayan ng Pilipino, dalawa. Unang-una, hindi nila alam kung ano nangyari. Pangalawa, mahirap yung kapasidad nila para magsabi na magmo-mobilize kami. Di ba? Kasi yung million tao march, meron bukas, tas wala naman 3 buwan. So kung ikaw yung politiko, sabi mo, ano ba yan, survive the storm, di ba? Tapos, happy days are here again. So, unlike sa ibang bansa na yung institution mismo nalalagyan ng parang pressure na pag hindi kayo mag-ayos nito, whether you are the COA, whether you are the DPWH, the consequences go far beyond, which is you will lose power, you will lose control. And it's not just the individuals, it's the institutions themselves. No? Kanyari, kung makitang hindi effective ang COA, ang tanong, bakit hindi pa natin buwagin ang COA? Di ba? May magkakaroon ng ganun tanong kasi paano nakakalusot to? Kasi pwedeng i-disregard ng isang politiko ang perception, pwede mo i-disregard ang COA, tas bahala na lang later. So yun yung challenge.
You're right,
Your
Bob.
consultancy, no? Is it also a big concern for investors?
Oo, kasi dalawa yan, di ba? Ang unang concern sa
Kasi hindi
investor.
ba parang sinasabi nila, sanay na yung mga investor dito sa Pilipinas na corruption. Di ba? Hindi pa parang business as usual for them?
Oo,
Or are they actually concerned?
So kung ang tatratuin natin itong business as usual, magiging business as usual rin yung epekto. Hindi tayo magkakaroon ng investment tulad ng Vietnam. Ang perception is, kung ganyan kayo, ngayon, ganyan kayo bukas, di ba? So yung investor na gustong pumasok, sige, makakuha pa rin tayo ng investor, di ba? May magtatayo pa rin. Pero yung nakita mo na perception na matutupad yung proyekto, kanyari sabihin natin, may proyektong gustong matupad. Ang problema, umaasa yung investor dito, pwedeng highway, pwedeng kalye, pwedeng development. Kung ang perception is mababa ang probability kasi baka nakawin, yung investor na magsasabi, kung hindi ako siguradong tutuparin itong proyekto, whether it is transportation, whether it is infrastructure, sa Vietnam na lang ako kasi sa Vietnam mukhang pupukpukin nila to para matapos within the next 5 years. So yun ang problema. Yes, so sanay ang investor, pero in other words, kung ano yung saan tayo ngayon, ganun pa rin tayo. Bukas, ang hinahanap ng investor, 3. Pangalawa is a general sense na nag-improve ang governance. Right? Yung parang naayos yung mga proseso, yung kailangan makulong, nakukulong, yung tipong may nag-i-improve. Ngayon, kung foreign investor ka, pumunta ka ng Pilipinas, kung mausap ng tulad mo ng journalist o tulad ng ibang tao, ang perception nila is iba-iba pa rin, labo-labo pa rin kung talaga bang may pagbabago. So yan yung pinakamalaking problema namin when dealing with foreign investors. The sense that there is real governance improvement. English ko na, that will lead to better outcomes for the country. Kasi pag nag-improve yung governance, di papasok sila, ilalago yung mga domestic industries natin, right? So, kasi kanyari magpasok ka, maglagay, kanyari maniwala ka, tupad tong flood control. Therefore, let's just use Bulacan. So Bulacan is now a better place to do business. You're more willing to put up a factory in Bulacan. Okay? Kasi natutupad, hindi babaha. Pero kung ang perception, labo-labo ang infrastructure dito sa Bulacan, walang direction, walang kararatnan, you're not gonna put there, and, the local economy is going to suffer.
Bob, you're right. I think the general sense is parang this investigation has lost steam. There was a time not too long ago when we had such high hopes for the ICI. And now parang ngayon isang member na lang and we don't even know if it's going to be around in the next several months to continue investigating this problem. But all of this, how has it affected the president's political capital, do you think? Especially leading up to 2028?
Okay, so dalawang aspeto yan. Definitely there is a sense of, shall we say, if not disappointment, parang bakit ganito pa rin hanggang ngayon, right? So it's disappointment. The second is, on the other side is, yung mga maraming taong disappointed, mostly, and marami dyan from the political elites, from the business community in Manila, from the middle upper classes, sa kanila si Sara is still unacceptable as an alternative, right? Rightly or wrongly, I'm not saying it's a correct interpretation na tama na hindi mabuti si Sara, pero ang perception nitong mga nasa elites, mas maraming problema pa tayo rin kay Sara, whether it is is she tuloy-tuloy ba ang, the things we did not like about her father, right? Her father did some positive things, her father did lots of negative things, mas sa kanila mabigat yung ginawa ni Sarang negatibo. So ang problema ngayon, sa tingin ko, humihina ang political capital ni Presidente, pero hindi siya under threat kasi marami pa rin sasabihin, pag tumalikod kami, yung alternative, it is not like Gloria in 2000 in 2000 when they thought na Gloria was a much better alternative to ERAP, right? So ang mangyayari ngayon sa tingin ko, naghahanap ang tao ng alternatibo, no, which is neither one. So marami pangalan lumilitaw na pwedeng maging possible in 2028. Siguro ayaw pa nila lumitaw fully kasi pagka lumitaw ka sa alternative, ikaw na naman yung atakihin. So they're just waiting for both sides to basically have a war of attrition. Tapos saka na sila lilitaw down the road.
Is that is a smart thing to do? I mean, we were just talking to Senator Risa Ontiveros here. She was here very briefly kanina, and she was talking about how they are talking within the party already about prospects for 2028, but at this point they haven't reached out to the other parties to form coalitions. And she's open to running for president if the party decides to nominate her, and she says that's a big if at this point. But hindi ba one of the things we learned in previous elections is that they need to start early in order to even get a fighting chance?
Kailangan mo mag-start early para makapagbuo ka ng network, makapaghanap siguro ng funding, right? Pero ang danger sa starting early, which former Vice President Binay will tell you all about, which Mar Rojas will probably tell you all about, is umaangat ka, hindi ka magiging target, lilitaw lahat ng dumi mo at baho mo, whether totoo or manufactured, right? Lilitaw lahat ng yan, i-juxtapose ka. Kasi pag tingnan mo lahat ng social weather station surveys, lahat ng considered frontrunners 1 to 1.5 years before the elections, hindi sila nanalo. Okay? Siguro si ERAP yung exception, pero tingnan mo si and then some of them are by accident, right? In 2010 baka si Villar sana or si ERAP, pero namatay si Cory and umangat si Pinoy. So parang ang election sa atin, parang parang surfing. Inaantay mo yung tamang wave, di ba? Tapos yun yung sasakyan mo. Si Duterte, nasakyan yung wave kasi matino yung economy after Pinoy or during the time of Pinoy, right? Pero ang sinakyan ni Duterte wave is the fear of criminality, and there is data that supports that fear was growing. Nasakyan ni Duterte very effectively the frustration at governance, okay? Pwedeng sakyan ni Sara yon, pwedeng iba sumakay. Nung panahon ni Pinoy, it was the sympathy for the mother. Nung panahon ni GMA, yung doubts about eligibility of FTJ. So parang waves ngayon, parang surfing yan.
So it's you have to time it perfectly, basically.
Yes.
Bob, yung corruption scandal has pulled down our GDP, lahat-lahat na, no? Mukhang ang sama ng mga figures na lumabas for year-end. Anong inaasahan ng investors for the year para makabawi tayo?
Okay, there dalawang paraan paano mo paangatin yung economy, di ba? Una, galing sa gobyerno, buhos ka lang ng pera, implement the programs. The problem is, sabi ko nga, wala pa rin sort of confidence na yung pagnanakaw na nangyari sa flood control, which is probably only one part of a bigger corruption. Different happens this way, no? In different aspects, whether you're talking agri, etc. Lahat yan, siguro iniisip nila may corruption. Pwedeng magbuhos ng konti ng pera yung gobyerno. That is possible, pero may hirap-hirap ng konti. Kasi pag nagbuhos ka, may question na naman. Pangalawa talaga is, siguro, hindi kailangan mag-grow, kailangan lang magkaroon ng sense ng improvement talaga sa pamamalakad. Kasi kung maggawa may sense, Filipinos are generally optimistic. Willing sila maniwala na may pagbabago, di ba? Yung taon-taon nagsusurvey si Mahar sa SWS, do you feel more optimistic? Kahit optimistic ang tao at end of year, kahit anong ipalo mo, bugbog mo, di ba? So, I think if I were the president, I would say you have to build a sense of optimism. You don't have to brag about the numbers. You take mo na yan, you take the hit, you take the blow of lower GDP growth this year. Honestly communicate to people that is the situation, but you need to fix the next part, which is build some confidence that real change is happening. Ang problema nga, people are skeptical because parang yung investigation has slowed down. There are questions about who is not being touched or being touched by the investigation, and that's the big challenge.
Kaya nga, I was about to say, yes, it's challenge is building back optimism, but how can you do that without accountability first, right? Before you show that you are serious about going after the perpetrators of this massive corruption.
Totoo yan. And I think ang frustration ng people is when you take a look at previous instances na may corruption na malaki na naging issue, nung panahon ni Marcos Sr., di ba? May mga nanindigan, di ba? Yung mga nanindigan sila, from the business community, you've heard those are the names, right? Atom, manindigan. There were different avenues by which people could say, we are frustrated, we want to act. And then there were leaders who were saying, we will act on principle. And kung ano yung datnan, dadatnan natin, right? You had people like Jimmy Ongpin, okay, and Butsakino. That seems to be lacking now. People don't have a general sense of who the alternative is. Alam naman natin, pinag-usapan na si Vico Soto, but that's too personality-based and malayo, di ba? Ang hinanap ng tao, mekanismo. Nung panahon dati, yung mekanismo was the Catholic Church, the academe, to some extent yung business groups, yung business community. Ngayon, pag tanong mo yung tao, saan ka willing mag-ugod ng panahon mo, pera mo, suporta mo, boses mo, labo-labo rin. So, the pressure that would normally scare a politician, wala rin.
Very fair points. We'll leave that there because I know you have to be on the road by 5:30. But thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today. That was Bob Herrera-Lim, Managing Director of Teneo Consultancy. Thanks, Bob.